Morning, brethren. Welcome to another daily devotional. We're still thinking about this little portrait Paul is drawing of his fellow worker Timothy here in this section of chapter 2 in Philippians. And having looked yesterday at the fact that Timothy was genuinely concerned for the spiritual well-being of others, I want to see two other things that Paul identifies with regards to Timothy. First of all, we see that Timothy was a man who demonstrated sacrificial commitment to the work of God. I said in one of our previous devotions that Timothy's contemporaries, the other Christians in Rome, where Timothy was at the time, were so taken up with their own interests that they were not prepared to give themselves sacrificially to the work of God's kingdom. Paul didn't see anybody else that he could send apart from Timothy, because everybody else was so interested in their own circumstances, their own things, and whatever it was. The point about Timothy was he was willing to make personal sacrifices in order to make himself available for work that needed done in relation to the advancing of the cause of Christ and ministering to the spiritual needs of God's people. Where others were not prepared to make personal sacrifices to serve God, Timothy was prepared to do so. That is something that is rare to find. And I would encourage you, brethren, I encourage myself, that if there's work to be done in the church, work to be done in the denomination, that we are to be people who are prepared to make personal sacrifices in order to step up and be ready to do that work. It's easy to serve God when it's convenient. It's less easy to serve God when it proves inconvenient to us. But sometimes we have to inconvenience ourselves in order to make sure that God's cause flourishes. In your own congregation, in the lives of other Christians, serving God sometimes costs us. And Timothy was a man who was prepared to make spiritual sacrifices to be committed to the work of God. But then there's a second thing that I think we must notice before we leave this little cameo, and that is that Timothy had a proven record in God's service. Look at what Paul says in verse 22. It's very interesting. He says, "You know that Timothy has proved himself, because as a son with his father, he has served with me in the work of the gospel." He has proved himself. So what Paul is saying is that over the years that he has known Timothy, and at this stage in Timothy and Paul's relationship, they were together for about 10 to 12 years. And over that 10 to 12 year period, Paul has observed Timothy. He's watched him, and he has seen how he can depend upon him, how Timothy is reliable, how he is proven to be faithful and trustworthy. When he's asked to do something, he does it. He's a man of proven spiritual character. He has proved himself. And he says to the Philippians, you know that that's the case. You know that Timothy has proved himself. He'd worked alongside Paul for quite a bit now. He'd worked in Philippi, Colossae, Thessalonica. He was now in Rome. And over the years, in every situation, Timothy had not only proved to be willing to go wherever he was sent for the good of the gospel, but he had also proved his worth in each of those situations. He was a man that Paul could depend on. I wonder if that's true of us. Are we men and women, young people, that God can depend upon? Have we proven ourselves over a given period of time, whether it's a couple of years or whether it's many years? A life characterized by obedience, by service, by reliability, by faithfulness. If people were to think of you, would they be able to say, as Paul said regarding Timothy, you know that so-and-so has proved himself or herself because of their work for the gospel? It's a lovely portrait that Paul paints of this child of God, Timothy, a man who is genuinely concerned about the spiritual well-being of others, a man who is quite prepared to make personal sacrifices in order to undertake the work of God, and a man who over the years proved himself to others when it came to his commitment to serving God. Let us be men and women who, like Timothy, demonstrate these glorious characteristics. Have a great day, folks.